Hello, and welcome to another episode of Undiscovered Beasts and Strange Phenomena. Please join our experienced and knowledgeable panel of hosts as we explore the great mysteries of our time: Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and unexplained phenomena.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to our show. Tonight, Mike and I are joined by a remote viewer. I'm really interested in exploring this subject, and so is Mike. We're joined by Vanessa Hogle, who is an accomplished author, filmmaker, and indeed a remote viewer. Vanessa, thank you for joining us and welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. Anytime I get to chat.
We're really good. Well, we're really looking forward to it. But many people have heard the term remote viewing, but won't actually know what it is. Can you explain what it is, Vanessa, please?
Oh, absolutely. I can explain what it is for me. I know that a lot of people out there, especially if they're trained in something like this, their situation or their experiences might vary a little differently. For me, and I did not even know that I was doing this in the beginning, it is simply I can be sitting in my living room, in the car. It used to be. I've gotten better about blocking it. At work, any place, and imagery will come to me. Voices will come, and no, I'm not crazy, not in the clinical sense, but it'll come to me, and I can see it as clear as if I'm looking at it on the TV screen. And I've been able to use that and help different teams all over the world with their investigations, because when it comes, it is that specific. If I am sitting in my living room and I see something in England, like you and I were talking about, for a team that I work with there, I can tell them exactly where they are, what they're looking at, or where they're going, what they'll see, so on and so forth, enough to where they can verify it once they're actually at that location. And it's as if I'm right there with them.
What I'm having trouble understanding is the actual process and what happens. So I say to you, because my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have no ego about it at all, but my understanding is I might give you coordinates of something, and I might ask you to go there in your mind and describe what you're seeing to me. Is that correct?
It can be if you are somebody who is like in one of the government programs or something like that, or taking one of the courses of people who teach this, where you're tested and trained. But I'm going to give you the best example I can give for my type of remote viewing. My publisher and my co-host for my show, his name is Mike Ricksecker, he was going to be going from Illinois to Rhode Island last July. Pretty straight shot, right? He told me, he said, okay, Vanessa, I'm going to call you at some point in the trip. You're not going to know where I am, and I need you to tell me everything about where I'm at. And I said, okay. So, bless him, he waited till I got off work, and my phone rang, and he got out the word hello. And then I talked for 10 minutes straight. And I finally stopped, and I said, okay, do I need to keep going, or do you want to ask me any questions, or what? And he says, no, Vanessa, keep going. So I continued to go for about another 5 minutes or so. And then I finally stopped because I got everything I felt like I could. And to me, if you try to remote view and you try to reach for something, you're more apt to get wrong information. I would just rather let it come to me, because when I kick that door open, it just flows in. And I said, no, I think this is it. I think I've got everything. So tell me where you're at. And he did. And it was the Mary Washington House in Virginia, which is nowhere near the route he would have taken to get from Illinois to Rhode Island. It was completely off his path. He had stayed off social media that day so that nobody would know where he was, so that he wouldn't give me any hints or any clues. And apparently I read the entire house. I read the fact that they had lost the paperwork that had the signature on it, which the Washingtons lost the house for a while because they couldn't find the deed to it. I read how many children had grown up there, the fact that they stair-stepped in age, what Mary Washington wore, the fact that the front door had been completely moved to a different area.
Okay.
There's
so
no way for me to know that.
No, I accept that. What I'm interested in the process from my own point of view, because there's a couple of questions I want to ask around it. So what comes to you? You say something comes to you. So do you have to go into a trance? I mean, how do you get it? Is it a feeling? Is it like a dream? What happens to you physically?
It's like somebody sitting next to me telling me everything. That's the best way I can explain it. And what they can't physically tell me, they will show me. If you could imagine that you're sitting on the couch and you're watching TV, and you see what you're seeing on TV, but you also see an entirely different scene that does not distract from what you're seeing with your own eyes, but you're seeing it in your mind.
I get it. And so,
does that make sense? Is that easier?
Yeah, it does. It does. I understand it now because there's a couple of questions that are sort of linked into that. So do you have to physically? So let's use that TV metaphor because I like it. So do you have to turn on the TV, or does it just turn itself on? Do the images just come in, or do you control them? Because I think there's an element of control, or I sense there is from what you say.
For me, the only control I have is when I completely block it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I've had to learn that if I'm driving, I have to block it. I have to, because it's just too much, and you can get in an accident that way. You know, the only time that shield or that blocking comes down is when I'm just exhausted and I'm driving, and then it there's just too much. So that's whether it's remote viewing or mediumship. I mean, I'll see dead people walking all along the side of the road. So I actually have pulled over into plenty of gas stations to get a couple hours sleep when I'm traveling. But driving is really the only time that I truly block it. And as far as controlling it to where I can decide how much I get, I always tell people, do what I say and not what I do, because I don't like to put restrictions on it. You know what I mean? I would rather, I hate to say this, but be at the mercy than miss something. But I will tell anyone out there, don't do that.
No,
it's
absolutely.
Not smart.
Now, you raised an interesting point just at the start of this when I talked about it, so I wanted to come back to it. You said, military programs might talk about coordinates, but you get this vision, this TV screen. Why would they adopt a different approach to you about this? Do you know why?
Because it's more clinical, and it's more fact-finding of specific things. Or it is, from the way it's been explained to me, because I actually just had a woman on my show talking about this, and she was fascinated that my way of doing it is so free. And that actually is the biggest difference. The more military or clinical way is testing, whereas my way is I'm telling you what I get, and believe me, you're going to come into contact with that, even if you don't believe me when I say it. And I actually have a quick story about that if you wanted to hear it.
Yeah. I'm interested.
Okay. I was working with a group called NP Paranormal out of Sheffield, England. They're now Knox Paranormal. They've changed their name. And they sent me a WhatsApp message. And they said, hey, Vanessa, we're going to go investigating tonight. Are you going to be free? And I said, well, sure, whatever. And I sent them, because, just the floodgate opened at that point, sent them everything I got. And one of them messaged me back, and they said, well, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us right now. It doesn't really sound like where we're going. And I said, well, I can't change it. I won't change it. This is what I see. So if I get anything else, I'll let you know, but just let me know. Well, sure enough, they get to the place that they're supposed to be going. They can't get in. Someone else says, hey, let's go to this other place. I heard about it. They'd never been before. They go there. Everything I told them was for the second place.
Cool. Okay. So I understand that. Now, to understand the process, what I was very interested in is, can anyone become a remote viewer, or are there some people who are more likely? Are there some people who are more likely to be? Because I read, in preparation for the show, I read a lot of things about military programs and what they felt, and and they obviously have a view of who's more susceptible or more likely to be able to do it, for want of a better word. How do you feel about that, Vanessa?
In my personal opinion, in order to do this, because I believe everybody has a capability. I'm not special. I believe everyone can do this, but you have to have one really important factor of yourself, and that's you have to be willing to be wrong. You, in other words, you have to take the ego completely out of it, and you have to trust yourself. And when I tell people, because everybody asks me, well, can you teach me how to do it? I can't teach you the way I do it, but I can teach you how you can learn to do it on your own. And one of the easiest ways is you keep a notebook with you. If you know you're going to Walmart that afternoon, you already know what you're going to see in the aisles and everything else. You know that. But you don't know who's going to be there. You don't know what cars are going to be in the parking lot. You don't know what people are going to be wearing. So try to tune into that. Write down what you see and be specific. And when you go, check your notebook. Did you get anything right? Did you get everything wrong? How did you feel when you were doing it? Different things like that. You have to learn to trust yourself and trust what you're being told and shown.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something there I just want to pick up on because I want to understand a little bit more about that. So you mentioned about the TV analogy earlier, and you just said then, how did you feel about it? So when you're doing your remote viewing yourself, do you get feelings as well as vision, or is it vision? So what do you feel emotions of the characters that you perceive, or is it an emotion that you feel about the event?
It could be either. It could be one or the other. It could be both. I had a session where I was trying to help somebody in Texas one time. I'm in Oklahoma. And during this particular session, one of their deceased loved ones came through. And of course I had to relay that as well. And to make sure that I had the right person, he had to show me or make me feel the way that he passed. To give you an idea, he was beaten to death with a baseball bat and set on fire.
Wow. Yeah, how awful.
So I had to feel a small portion of that to make sure that I had the correct person. Mm-hmm. To no degree that he did, of course, that would be awful, but enough for me to know that hurt a lot, and sometimes that's another point of this. When you're talking about remote viewing, you're talking about being a medium or whatever, not only do you have to trust yourself, but you also have to be very cognizant of how you're relaying information. And sometimes what comes through does not make any sense to me whatsoever. But if I leave it out, it might be the piece of the puzzle that the person I'm supposed to be giving this to needs. It might make all the sense in the world to them, even if to me it sounds ridiculous. So that's what I mean by trusting yourself. If you get that vision, if you get that feeling, if you feel it in your soul that you were shown that for a reason, regardless of how ridiculous it sounds, you must say it. You have to trust yourself enough to do that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that anyone can do it. Obviously, with all of these abilities, are there types of people that are better at it than others? Is there are some people more gifted at it? And if so, what sort of characteristics might they possess?
This is going to be a really unpopular answer, but I have to be honest with you. Those who have suffered trauma in their lives tend to be better receptors. And the reason for that is what you need to see or who you need to see, you have to be comfortable with what you're being shown in order to relay the message. And somebody that has not had trauma in their life they tend to, if they get that imagery or that vision, they tend to push it away. Whereas somebody like myself, I've had a great deal of trauma in my life.
I'm sorry about that.
I already know what it feels like. So I'm just like, oh, so we're doing this now. Okay. I know that sounds like a crazy answer, but it's true.
No, it doesn't. It's a fascinating answer. It's a fascinating answer. And, Mike messaged me just now, trauma opens up stuff, and I'd agree with him. I think you have to have have a certain resilience in order to see some of the things you may see if you're remote viewing. So it makes perfect sense to me. But it links on to the next question I had in understanding the process, because I think that's the way my mind works. I'm quite analytical, as you might have guessed. One of the things that I've seen you comment is that you have to be careful. I'm paraphrasing something that I think you wrote. So if I'm incorrect, then by all means challenge me. Okay.
Okay.
But you said that sometimes people can open themselves up to something unpleasant. What does that mean, the something unpleasant? And how could we prevent that something unpleasant from being opened in? So if I decide I want to do remote viewing, because I'm going to give it a try at some point, Vanessa, I want to see if I can do it. Mm-hmm. What might I come across that's unpleasant, and how can I stop it from taking control in that situation?
Well, it's difficult. Okay, it really is difficult because, like I said, with me, when I was remote viewing for a team in Virginia, before I went out there to investigate, I knew, because there were children involved in this particular case, living children that were being traumatized. I knew that I had to do whatever it took in order to get whatever information I could to help this family, because it was a private residence. This worst case I've ever worked on to date, and it was years ago. And so I did. I opened myself completely. This was to the point to where I had deceased people walking around my house. I mean, they were waking me up at night. They were always there, and some of them were very unpleasant.
Right. How did you know the unpleasant ones? How did you know? I mean, how did you know the unpleasant ones? I'm interested in how you knew the pleasant.
Because they let you know they're no different deceased than they are living.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I've said for years. I mean, if you were a butt during life, odds are you're going to be a butt during death. It's just that's the type of person. I'm being real sweet. I'm not cursing on your show. Okay, that's normally not how I do it.
I don't care if you do. So wouldn't that be quite hard though, being a butt for eternity? You might want to change your attitude, but maybe.
I'm telling you right now, I think half of them enjoy it. True story. But
sure.
You have to be. Well, I say you have to be willing to put up with it. You don't have to put up with anything. But for somebody like myself, if I'm going to try to help somebody, I don't want to miss a thing, which means that I have to allow all of that in. And I get chastised for this all the time. But it's my way of doing things. Would I recommend somebody else doing that? No. The reason I do it is because if something comes through that is particularly unpleasant, it can be very difficult to close the door on it again. And I've been in that situation. I'm well more versed now than I was 10 years ago. So now I can handle it, but before I just suffered through it. You think you remote view and you see a vision for a minute, but it can last weeks.
Yeah, that's it. So these things could hang around your house. How did you get rid of them? I mean, the unpleasant ones, the butts ones, a better word. How did you get rid of them?
It took a lot. It took a lot of meditation. It took a lot of saging. It took a lot of. I'm a pagan. I'm a tree hugging, dirt worshiping, card carrying, witchy pagan, and I still did a lot of praying. Just to my particular deities. But it took a lot. It took a lot, and it takes its toll. That's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. My phone rings off the hook. My messenger on Facebook is going constantly. Twitter is going constantly. Instagram is going constantly. My phone's never not dinging. It's dinging the entire time I've got you guys on here.
Wow.
And that is with people wanting help, and I understand that. I get it. but they don't understand that. So I've had to become very selective in which cases I take on and what I do, because I do all of this and work 70 hours a week outside the home and raise a child and have a show and write books and do a docuseries.
So you're very, very busy. So even when you're speaking to people, so, I mean, I'm not asking you for any advice or help, I'm really not. But even when you're speaking to, say, me and Mike right now, might you have messages come through? I mean, you know, in the supermarket, do you have messages come through? I mean, how does your life run with that? I'm fascinated by how you actually might work and think.
It's tough. It's tough. When it happens that way, the only way I'm going to say something, if I'm not approached first, you know, is if people ask about it, you know, or if I can truly sense this person is coming through, and man, I have got to let this person know, because A, they're not going to leave until I do, you know, and B, maybe this person really needs to hear that. Only a few times have I ever walked up to a perfect stranger and let them know. Well, only a few times, because it can be taken the wrong way.
Of course, but let me say no. I mean, if anything comes through for Mike and I during the show, you have our absolute permission, I'm sure, to tell us, because I'd be fascinated. It'd be an interesting experiment live on the show. I'd love something like that. But if it doesn't, I don't expect it. So it means don't. There we are. Okay. Let's move on to your book, your new book. Is it Diary of a Loose Magnet? What? Tell us about it.
Diary of a Psychic Loser Magnet, and we've actually, to a certain degree, touched on this already, and I love how it led into it. We were talking about trauma and, you know, what somebody has to go through, you know, in order to be able to do this to the best of their ability and you know, not carry around too much baggage from it. This book, unlike my previous books, where my previous books are investigations, remote viewing, meditations, experiences that I've had, testimonies from people I've investigated with, the whole kit and caboodle, this particular book is the trauma. It is the trauma. It is what I went through from 7 years old up, small, not all of it, because that would be like a huge book, but it's the really important traumatic experiences in my life that have led me to this point. It's also my responsibility that I have to take for the choices that got me into those situations, and it's acknowledgement of growth from those situations. That is another really key factor. Anyone that does anything in the metaphysical realm, if you don't grow, then you shouldn't even be doing it. And that is something, one of the reasons I wrote this book is because there's an epidemic going around, and it's not coronavirus. It's called victimization. Everybody wants to be a victim. Everybody wants to be a victim because it gets attention. And nothing irritates me more or makes me more angry than whiny titty babies. I can't handle it. And this book, I cannot tolerate it. Because if I haven't laid down and died yet with the shit I've been through, pull up your big girl britches and get moving. You know, and that might seem harsh. That might seem a harsh way to put things. But if you're going to be in this field, you can't stay stagnant. You're not going to do yourself or anybody else any good if you don't acknowledge your own traits that lead to bad decisions and how to overcome those decisions. That's what that book is entirely about.
Okay, great. So what bad decisions, without getting too personal, do you think you have made that have led you to become accomplished as a remote viewer? How has that process worked for you?
Oh, good gravy. A lot of them in the beginning when I was young, because, of course, when we were young, that's not our decision to make. You know, those decisions aren't ours. But as an adult, you know, we have to accept accountability for our choices. We have to if we want to grow. And I made some pretty stupid, dumb decisions because I didn't listen to myself. Because here I am, the psychic. Here I am helping everybody else, but I'm not listening to me. The person everybody's coming to, I'm not giving her the credit she deserves and listening to what my own gut is telling me. I could give advice, perfect for everybody else, but never for me. And it's weird. That seems to be something that we all deal with, is we trust ourselves enough to do this for other people, but not to do it for ourselves. And that leads us into being punching bags for other people. That leads us into being victims of con artists. It leads down so many of those roads. And at some point in time, if you're going to be in this field or in any other field, you've got to wake up. You've got to see the pattern for what it is, and you've got to change it. And that takes balls. Balls of solid rock, Betty. And people have to be willing to do that. And unfortunately, a lot aren't. It's easier to be the victim.
Okay. Now, in your book, do you talk about how to circumvent that process or how to deal with it?
I sure do. Matter of fact, I even lay out questions and give the person who's ever reading the book, because it's their book now, it's private. They don't have to worry about anybody else seeing it. I put questions in it and give them a space to write, and each individual situation, so that they've just read my experiences. Now they can share theirs. They can compare the two. They can see where they need to grow. They can see what they need to work on. It's really interactive. It's not a crazy long book. It's not my longest book. It's only about 100 pages. But I don't think you need to browbeat somebody into submission with a 200-page book when it comes to something like this. I think when they read what I've been through, and I was very candid over situations that most people would keep private. One of them, which I did put on social media, is I used to model. I was a cute little thing back in the day, and I after a show I was at a bar, and I was only 18 or 19. So I wasn't even old enough to get in there, but all the bouncers knew me at all the different bars, so went in there just to go dancing with my girlfriend, and I knew I shouldn't be doing that and everything, and I also knew that I put off this particular aura. That's the other thing that we don't talk about when we're in this field and have these special abilities, is you attract these type of things, and you've got to know when danger's there. And I got attacked. In the bar, and I talk about that in there. If I'm willing to disclose that type of stuff, all the crap behind the smiling profile pic, then I think people can do a little bit of self-reflection themselves.
Okay, good. Can you just mention the title again and where people can get it?
Diary of a Psychic Loser Magnet. And hopefully it will be out before June. My publisher says it will, so we're just going to see. But my other books, it'll be on Amazon Prime. On Amazon, all my books are on Amazon.
Amazon, and they just look for you as an author page, would they? Have you got an author page?
Yeah, if you Google Vanessa Hogle, Hogle, I've got about 15 pages on Google.
Okay, marvelous.
Everything I've ever done is on there.
Good. I wanted to ask you some general questions now, a couple I'm really interested in. Now I understand the process and something about you. One of the things, we sort of touched on it earlier on, but the CIA spent, I think, over $25 million on Project Stargate. Do you know anything about that, and what do you think about the credibility of the CIA using remote viewing and some of the conclusions they came to?
I understand the concept of it, and I don't disagree with it, because if we were doing it here, I can guarantee you it was being done in other countries. We don't corner the market on this. So no. I do understand its purpose. I understand the reasoning behind it. My only problem with it is that it isn't an exact science. Can it get you into the area that you need to be at? Quite possibly, yes. But it can also, depending on the person who's doing it, you can get misleading information. So to me, it's something that you have to be very careful of. And I think that's one of the reasons that when the military was doing this, they were being very clinical about it and doing test runs and doing, things where it was controlled settings. So I understand and appreciate it, but it's risky. But I don't think it's something that shouldn't be done. We might have stopped doing, the Stargate program, but I can pretty damn much guarantee you that other countries didn't. The
Russians are very interested in it. The Russians and the Chinese will definitely have done this, particularly the Russians. It's well documented that they're interested in ESP and psychic research, definitely. You raised a very interesting point there that I just wanted to focus in on, because it comes down to this. And many critics of remote viewing, when I've been reading about them, in all science, what you need essentially is experiments that can be replicated and then independently corroborated, and there's a whole different systems about hypotheses. But science is quite rigorous in its approach to analysing information. And one of the things you said is about assessing the credibility of the information that you're doing. So if you're looking for intelligence, how do we assess the credibility of the information that the viewer is providing? I think that's a good point. So can you think of any way that either you can assess the credibility of other remote viewers, or how you assess your own information that we could benefit from?
The way, and I've actually done YouTube videos on this, on how to spot fake psychics, because to me it's all encompassing, okay? If I'm remote viewing for somebody, I receive absolutely zero information. Like, I didn't even know what state Mike was going to be in. Had no idea. No idea. When I do this for teams in other countries, they give me no information. I give them everything I can. They give me no information. Then they verify what I said. And it's all written down or sent in voicemails. It's not just, somebody has to remember, and I think that's kind of what she said, so I bet that's right. No, it's very precise. That, to me, is how I get tested. But when you're talking about something like Stargate, it's completely different, because you're going after information that can't be verified, because then you're giving away your cover. You see what I'm saying? So yes, that is where I get a little uncomfortable with it, because unless you've got somebody, in a controlled setting, sure, it can work. But if let's say the Stargate program was still going on right now, and they were going to use me, and they were going to try to spy on somebody over there, I can tell them everything I'm seeing. They can pray I don't have an agenda, and they can hope that I'm right, but there's no way to verify that until well after the fact. And even then, it's not always possible to verify it. So you end up in a situation like that having a lot of assumptions. And just because somebody was right in the clinical aspect, in the clinical trials, doesn't mean they were right in the grand scheme of things. That's where my discomfort of the situation comes into play.
Yeah, those are good points. I like them. I want to focus in now, if I may, on a couple of practical examples, and I've got a couple of questions that I'm dying to ask you. I'll wait till I understand the process first. And it's this is the first question, which leads up to the fun things I want to ask you, if you know what I mean. But here's a more serious one. I know you've been involved in looking for missing persons. How do you go about trying to find them, and what emotions and things do you see when you're locating them?
Well, the one that I did here in Oklahoma, and please, for yourself and Mike and the listeners, I cannot disclose details.
Absolutely.
I can't disclose names or anything. No. But for the one that I worked on here in Oklahoma, I didn't have to do anything. He came to me. He came to me before the police ever did. That is the funny thing. I was actually working at a dental office, the same company that I work for now, but I was at their, hold on, my TV's going crazy. I was at their Lawton office, and I'm sitting there and I'm working on a patient, and all of a sudden this gentleman comes up to me in that way. I see him. He's right there, and he shows me this picture, and it's of him. And it was in a park. I mean, he was, an African-American man. He looked much younger in the picture, had on a bright, sunny yellow shirt, and it was a really happy picture. But the man showing me this was not happy. And I'm like, okay, well, what's this about? I couldn't figure it out. About an hour later, I get a phone call, and it was from a friend of mine whose husband's a police officer. And she says, Vanessa, we don't know what to do. My husband needs your help. And I said, I already know where he is. And she says, what are you talking about? I said, you called me about a guy, right? He's missing? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, I've already seen him. And she says, well, how quickly can you get here? I said, it'll be a couple hours, because of how far away I was working. And I sat down and I sketched it out. I saw how he was laying. I saw what he was laying next to. I saw the people that were involved in his disappearance. And I met up with her husband, and I gave him the pictures because I sketched it all out. It's just easier to have visual aids. You don't have to be an artist, but if you can get something down on paper, that really does help. And they ended up finding him where I said, how I said, and then the person responsible was the person that I drew. And what was crazy about it was all during this process, I was getting conflicting information. This, again, comes to the point where you have to trust yourself, because I was getting information from the happy guy in the picture, and then I was getting information from the sad guy that showed me the picture. And I couldn't reconcile the two. I could not understand why it seemed to vary so much. Come to find out, he had Alzheimer's. So I was getting the happy memories of his long-term memory that generally stays when you have Alzheimer's for a while, plus at his death, when he was frightened and confused and cold and scared. So I couldn't reconcile the two, so I just gave all the information that I could, and they explained to me, the cops explained to me that he had Alzheimer's. And that was probably why the memories and everything I was being told seemed to span 20 to 30 years difference.
Very interesting. Now, one of the things that I was interested in, obviously I have a real interest in looking for unknown species all over the world, Vanessa. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put this question to you because I'm interested in your reply. It might seem fatuous to you, but I'm going to ask you. I've got nothing to lose. This is my show with Mike Sheep. So if I'm fascinated by Bigfoot in North America. If I said to you, Vanessa, I want you to find me a Bigfoot, can you tell me where it is right now? What would you say to me?
Can I tell you where one specifically is? No. I can tell you that they tend to migrate up towards the redwoods up there in Northern California, at the highest peak of the mountains that are there in Alaska, and on the eastern sides of the forest in Canada. Those are where the main three areas where I see what you would call a congregation of them, but I don't mean it as like communities. No more than 6 at a time, and they tend to be small family packs. But the funny thing is the ones in California compared to the ones in Alaska, compared to the ones in Canada, all look different. They all have different colored fur. Their texture of fur is different. The one in Northern California tends to have more of a water-resistant fur because of the strange variances in the temperature and humidity that is up in that area. As far as being able to find them, I have my own opinions on that. I have my own opinions on that. Do I think it's possible? Yes. Mm-hmm. Do I think it's going to happen anytime soon? I would like to say yes. But not only are they very protective of their own and themselves, they are also highly more intelligent than most people would like to believe. Most people want to look at them and think, that's a big bear ape-looking, animal, and that doesn't have any feelings or whatever, and that nothing could be further from the truth. They have their own way of doing things, their set way of doing things. They're extremely intelligent, highly functional, and are masters at blending into where they're at.
So do you think they're as intelligent as us, or less intelligent, or the same, or more? I mean, what do you think? I mean, I know
think they are as intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to say that I'm wrong on that because we hold down jobs and everything else. But it would be really easy to make an assumption on something like that, to think that they're not as intelligent as we are because they don't have jobs, because they don't drive cars, because they don't do this, that, and the other. But they're able to hide. They're able to completely mask their presence in particular areas. They're hiding from us, and we have all the technology. You tell me who's smarter.
Okay, good. So how? I mean, do you have any idea? Would you? I mean, because I get asked this question all the time, so I'm interested in your answer to this, because you obviously feel things. How many would you say there might be in North America? I guess
at least 200.
But not thousands, not millions. How many?
I don't feel thousands. But you asked in North America.
A very small number. Do you think a very small number?
Yes.
Okay.
I really do.
Okay.
That sounds like a small number, but we still haven't seen one. At least not that we know of. I don't want to say that they were a specific species that are on the border of extinction. It's not like that. It's like perfect population control. I also think that they have longevity in life that we don't.
Interesting. So are they more like humans, or last question on this? Are they more like humans or apes or something in between, do you think?
You're going to laugh at me when I tell you this?
I'm not going to laugh at you.
Okay.
I'm open to anything. I'm genuinely intellectually curious about what you have to say.
My entire life, even before this movie came out, this is how I saw them. Like Harry and the Hendersons.
Mm-hmm. So
that's
you see
how
them
I
like
saw
that?
them. Yes,
okay.
My entire life, even before that movie came out. I've always seen them not benign. I'm not going to say that they can't have a temper or can't show anger, but to me, they're elevated. They have an elevated state of consciousness.
Interesting. So when you combine your remote viewing, are you a psychic as well? Do you see people's futures, or is that a completely different thing?
I'm kind of the whole kit and caboodle. I got all the clairs. I read tarot cards. You name. Okay, it runs in my family, but I kind of got the mother load, if that makes sense. Yeah, I see dead people. They sit down on my couch and talk to me. I remote view. I read tarot, and I hear them. I can smell them. I can feel them. Yeah, it's not. I mean, I might be single. I'm not lonely. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't know what I would do if I was lonely.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure. I think you'd struggle to be lonely in your current situation.
Yeah.
One of the points that the Stargate project mentioned was traveling, and I read about this, and I was very interested in this, so I'm going to ask you about it.
Okay.
They talked about the ability to be able to travel forward and backward in time, and one of the things that they talked about was that they had seen Martians maybe 1 million or 2 years ago as an advanced civilization on Mars before there was some sort of environmental disaster which basically wiped them out. My question for you is, can you travel forwards and backwards in time, and what do you think about that Martian scenario? I suppose there are two parts, but I'm kind of interested in the whole thing because I read the whole story and I thought, well, this is interesting. I'm going to ask Vanessa about this. So fire away, Vanessa. Give me your opinion.
Okay. I might piss some people off with this one. Can I travel forward and backward? Like astral travel? Yes. I've seen previous deaths of mine, and I have seen forward to when I die in this life. I've made it longer than I've made it longer than I ever have. I've broken many cycles to get to the age that I am now. I've never been this old, ever. In one of my previous deaths, I was hung at 17, and I actually watched them chase me down. Yeah, I ended up
reading. I'm not going to ask your age.
Huh?
Vanessa, sorry to interrupt. I'm not going to ask you your age, but I think you're what 25 or 26? Is that right? Something like that.
Bless your heart, love. I'll be 48 on Saturday. So I'm proud of my age. I am proud of it. I'm still kicking.
Good.
But
Good.
when it comes to the stuff like what you were just talking about, how that to me is reminiscent of people who say that they can tell you what their past lives are, or that they can tell you what your past lives are. It is very easy to make up a convincing story that can never be verified. I watch people do it all the time. And that's why when I get a little bit irritated, upset, angry, pissed off, fucking livid, if I can say it, when I see people on social media say, I can guarantee you that I can solve all your problems with the past life reading. No, you can't. No, you can't. There are no guarantees. I can tell you right now that there used to be this really amazing race of beautiful women that used to live on Venus, and they had long purple hair, and they didn't, their feet never touched the ground, and they could do all these amazing things and all of these things that they created. But can I prove it? No, I can't prove it. So,
well, that would have been a very long time ago, because I think Venus has been Venus did, my understanding from science is that Venus would have had the possibility to have some sort of life on it, but not for a very, very, very long time, because it's obviously a boiling
exactly
cold.
Right, but it's like you just said in that last one, it was like, 1.2 million years ago or something like that, or whatever it was that you said. Anybody can say that they see that. And I'm not going to say that they're not. But I am, as much as I'm a psychic, a remote viewer, a medium, everything else, I'm also a skeptic. If it, true story, if I can't find some way to verify facts, I won't discount you, but I'm not going to put my name on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, yeah, I know. I do.
Yeah, credibility to me is everything. So if I tell people when I read for them, question every word that comes out of my mouth. If you feel like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, tell me. That when I do a tarot reading, they're not allowed to talk until I'm done, because I'm afraid I might read, and I do them over the phone. I don't do them in person. I'm afraid that I'm going to read their intake of breath. I'm afraid that that if they talk, that I'm going to miss a message, or that I'm going to latch on to some little tidbit that they accidentally let slip and run with that and completely foul up their reading. To me, it's all about integrity and making sure that they're getting the best reading they possibly can based on the truthful information that I'm getting without cheating. That's kind of how I look at that stuff. Is somebody can say that they've seen that, and maybe they did, but I'm not sticking my name to it. I can't, if I can't back it up somewhat, I'm not on board.
Okay.
I sound like a bitch, don't I?
No, you don't. You sound very straightforward, which is good. You give me straightforward answers to my questions, which is what I want, because I'm trying to learn as much as I can from you in this hour. So another big point that Stargate touched on, and I'm going to put it to you as well, is the existence of alien life. Have you ever seen aliens? And
I have seen a spaceship. I've seen a spaceship. I sure have. Oh yeah, about my son and I both saw it. We were I went and picked him up from his dad. He was visiting his dad, and we were driving home, and we saw it probably 3 miles out, and it never moved. We just kept watching it. It never moved. No sound, no wind, no nothing. And it was about, once we got up underneath it, it looked to be about the size of a football field. And it was 4 points. I want to say it was 3 red and 1 blue. And I think the blue point was the shortest point, like an elongated diamond. and it was hovering maybe 1,000 feet above this farmhouse that's out on Sooner Road over here by where I live. And as soon as we went underneath it and past that, my son is still, looking, his head sticking out the window looking up at it, it just goes zoop and goes straight up in the air and completely disappeared.
And building on that, have you actually ever tried to or had remote view any alien species? Has that ever been part of your work?
It hasn't been part of my work, and if I'm being very honest, I know that they exist because of what I've seen. Because my ex-husband's military. That wasn't military, okay? That was not military. Believe me, I spent a lot of time on base. But knowing, it's weird. It's like knowing they're there and physically trying to seek contact is completely different. Now, I believe something tried to make contact with me at work about 3 months ago, and it scared the bejesus out of me. I'm not going to lie. Scared the piss out of me, and thank goodness I was in the bathroom because I was sitting there, okay? I was on the loo, and all of a sudden, I am so candid, right? So all of a sudden, the air in front of me burned. And it's like if you were to take film, like movie theater film, and set it on fire when it's doing that little spin thing, you know how on the screen it would look like it was burning? That's what it looked like, the air in front of me. It was like a membrane caught on fire. And it lasted for a good 10 seconds. And 10 seconds is longer than you think when you're looking at some shit like that. Okay? And I just froze. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what just happened, but I'm going to wash my hands and get the hell out of here. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm not afraid of anything except for spiders and small spaces. And that freaked me out. That freaked me out, but good. And I still, to this day, have no idea what it was. Was it a membrane between two worlds? Was it alien activity? And when I think of alien, I don't think of E.T. I don't think of the little green dudes. I don't. I think they more than likely look very similar to us, or at least the ones that are allowed to be here on Earth. I do believe that they're intertwined with us. But I still don't know what that was. So could that have been them trying to make contact with me? Absolutely. Am I going to seek that out? Not today, sir. No, I'm good. I'm going to wait a little bit.
No, fair enough. I mean, have you ever gone to any, because you said you could travel backwards and forwards in time, I guess, have you ever traveled to any historical event of any significance?
Okay, this ish. I did not know what this was, because when I say travel back, it happens during meditation. I don't know how other people do it, but it happens during meditation or sleep. Because sleep, I have no block up, so crazy shit happens. And I was in my apartment, and I was in this area, and there were these long tables, and it was in a courtyard with these stone houses that were kind of dotting the landscape around it, but everything was quite contained. And I was looking at all these people. I was looking for somebody, and I couldn't figure out who I was looking for. And every other person or every third person or every fourth person that I looked at, they would look back at me and smile, and then this black tar-looking stuff would start running out of these boils on their face. And I was trying my best to not let them know that I could see it because they couldn't see it. So I was seeing who was going to die. And this one, yes. And that was very troubling. And when I say I travel back, like when I saw my death, I feel the grass under my feet. I feel the dew on the grass. I can feel the fabric of the clothing I'm wearing. I am very much there. Very much there. It's different than a dream. And I have some control in it, which is very different from a dream. And I kept seeing this one particular gentleman. And I ended up, when I came out of it, I called my boyfriend at the time and said, I don't know what the hell just happened. I said, but this is what I saw, and this one person seemed to, he was constant and right there. And he said, well, describe him to me. And I did, and he goes, I want you to go to the computer, type in this name. I did that, and I typed up the name. It was William the Black.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
have you ever been tempted to go to any historical events and sort of answer questions about them? Because obviously things like the crucifixion and, I don't know, the Civil War or something like that. Have you ever been tempted to have a look at those? Or am I encouraging you to do so now?
You're actually encouraging me to do so now. I never really looked at it that way. Now, I've been to Civil War sites, and the soldiers come up and tell me everything I need to know. So I haven't had to travel back. I was in Virginia, and we went to Sailor's Creek. And this actually was all caught on camera. The second the car stopped, I was already out and running because I tend to do that because it's weird. And they were just surrounding me. They were surrounding me, and they were telling me everything. And Gwen got all this on camera, and she was able to verify every last bit of it, from the direction that they came to the direction that they should have come, the how much loss of life they had, who had been there, who some important people, and I'd never been there. Why they did the things that they did, that the loss of life would have been considerably less if they would have just listened to these other orders and went this different direction, all of it. And they're all just yelling me at it. I'm having to put up my hands and say, stop, I can't hear all of you. And they finally simmer down, let one individual give me the information, and Gwen was able to verify every last bit of it.
Very cool. So we're nearly at the end of our show, unfortunately.
Yep.
If people want to follow you or contact you in any way, what's the best method to get hold of you, Vanessa? I know you're extremely busy, so let us know. I've been looking at your page. So, what if people want to get any information about you? What's the best method that you would suggest right now?
Actually, the best method to make it very easy on them is if they, and it's a new page, but it's easier for them if they just go to VanessaHogle.com. That will take them to my website, which is still kind of under construction. But at the bottom page of that, it's got all of my social media links, my book links, my docuseries links, everything. So one site fits all. It really does help. It really does, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just one last question, if I may. What's next for you, Vanessa? What's coming up?
Oh, good gravy. I will be flying out in May to start our second season of Hidden Gems. This one will be stateside. For those that want to see the first two episodes, our third one should be out soon for the Ireland edition. It's on Amazon Prime under Hidden Gems Ireland. For you to watch, if you have Amazon Prime, please watch it and leave a review. We're not Ghost Adventures, so if you're looking for fake shit, that we're not your gals. Okay? We're not your gals. But we're going to be filming on the East Coast in May. And then, oh, good gravy, Haunted Road Media Paracon in Alton, Illinois, June 13th, I think it is. Be there. Rhode Island in July. Supposed to be in Michigan in August. Can't do that. Going to be in Arizona in October, and probably back to Ireland in October.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much, Vanessa, for being on the show.
Thank you.
On our show. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun, and you're very funny, as well as being obviously very interested. A very interesting person. I had a good time tonight. You made it very easy for me. Thank you ever so much on behalf of Mike and I.
I appreciate y'all. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been our pleasure. ladies and gentlemen, that was Vanessa Hogle. Very interesting guest. Lots of great stories. I enjoyed having her on. I'm sure Mike did too. We'll be back next Tuesday. And, of course, on social media, Mike will be pinning up our next guest coming up very soon. All right, ladies and gentlemen, take care. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week at our normal time on Tuesday, 7 p.m. PST, 10 p.m. EST, and watch out for who our guest is then. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and good night.